Namaste everyone. Today I have the pleasure of introducing Sri Mahesh Ramanujam ji. We all heard Akshay Dholakia ji mention that he is a third generation entrepreneur. And as a fourth generation entrepreneur, I thank you for leading, for ensuring that these lessons in saving and more importantly, sustaining a healthier homeland are not shouldered only by us. As someone born after the turn of the century, I'd be lying if I said when we talk about 2030, 2050, and 2070, I didn't feel the weight of it all. It's abstract for me or my family, as this will be the bulk of, of my lifespan. We need context. We need someone to show us why a zero emissions India is needed. It's not just a matter of life and death, but just as importantly, it's a matter of quality. Quality of life and quality of how we spend our time here. And this is why I'm honored to be bringing to the stage a man who is going to be able to walk us through not just the state of decarbonization globally and here in India, but who is going to share with us the state of mind necessary for tackling this challenge head on. If you spend 15 minutes with him, he will definitely change your mind regarding sustainability, and I have experienced it. So after the conclave, if you spare some time to experience it firsthand, it would be great. Thank you.
Co-founder, president and CEO of the Global Network for Zero. Mahesh is not only laser-focused on moving people towards seamless ESG compliance and an economy free of harmful emissions, but he is specifically committed to digitally transforming climate action with GNFZ's first-of-its-kind platform for decentralizing, democratizing and driving net zero results. Prior to GNFZ's founding, Mahesh served as president and CEO of the US Green Building Council, Green Business Certification Inc., and the global technology platform ARC. Responsible for leading a community of 13 million strong and for spearheading unparalleled growth for the globally recognized LEED standard and its certification and credentialing process. Please welcome Mahesh Ramanujam, President and CEO of Global Network for Zero.
Thank you, Tejbhai, for this kind introduction. It's an extraordinary moment this morning. So namaste to everyone. I want to thank Sri Govind Kaka for his continued generous support and the SRK family for organizing this fabulous event. Before we get into today's discussion on decarbonization, I want to talk about something that we can all relate to, we can all empathize with. Last week, I was in London for travel, where it was 20 degrees Celsius. When I returned, Chennai had reached almost 43 degrees Celsius. I thought about how I am one of the lucky ones to have access to air conditioning. And I can get it when I need it. But what about everyone else? Every single person I saw on my way back to my home, be it a construction worker, be it an auto rickshaw driver, be it a vegetable vendor, they are all in the sun for 12 to 14 hours a day, at direct sunlight. So I thought about today's event and how they are on the receiving end of what we are going to do today and tomorrow to address today's challenges. Nearly 19 years ago, Thomas Friedman wrote a book called The World is Flat. In it, he travels to Bangalore and writes about India's growing job force and technology as a crucial to global supply chain. He argued that as a result of this flattening, as he called it, from the combination of workflow software, the personal computer, and the fiber-type microcable, the changing 21st century global economy in 2005 had, for all intents and purposes, has become a level playing field. At the time this book was published, India's emissions were at least 28% higher than they were in 2021. But that did not factor into Friedman's argument. And even more ironically, Friedman described Bangalore as one hot town. And guess what? He didn't mean the temperature. He was talking about the jobs, about the booming opportunity that had come from outsourced jobs. But the issue I took with this argument, the flaw in Friedman's theory, was that because the world was more connected, it would somehow become more equitable. Is that it failed to account for the fact that India's Silicon Valley was and is certainly no exception when it comes to rising temperatures. It failed to fully take into account the looming sleeping giant known as climate change. And most importantly, its early 21st century ideology did not account for the reality that every country, city, community, and individual will never experience the life-threatening challenges of climate change in precisely the same way. Why? Because no matter how much technology brings us together, we have different backgrounds, circumstances, and resources. We have systemic inequalities that have laid bare and not leveled the issues of the playing field. Some of us will longer than others because our job does not require us to be in the direct sunlight as the auto rickshaw driver or the construction worker or the vegetable vendor. We must be honest with ourselves and say we have the ability to do more than we are doing now. During my tenure at the US Green Building Council, we turned LEED into the globe's leading green building standard and made India the third largest market in the world so we can continue to help decarbonize the built environment and lower the emissions. Take MGM Healthcare in Chennai. This was the first project in Southeast Asia and only a second in the world to achieve LEED Platinum for healthcare. An achievement reflected in the thoughtful design. From the city's tallest vertical garden to daylight integration to improve the patient experience, MGM Healthcare has set the bar for ensuring that the places built to care for our most vulnerable enhance their well-being in the process. Or Infosys, who as of summer 2019 had one of the largest LEED portfolios in the world, in the country. Their Bengaluru portfolio includes 32 LEED certifications, which accounts for only a portion of their total certifications nationwide. Similarly, they have 11 LEED version 4.1 platinum certifications alone in Pune, Maharashtra. These are extraordinary, necessary commitments to decarbonization. But we must look at these examples and excellence and say, what's next? Decarbonization is great. But decarbonization that delivers net zero and sooner than 2070, that's what is required in India. What we see a lot of now are overtures of decarbonization here in India. We have well-intentioned public and private sector entities who want to demonstrate that they believe in the power of compliance and transparency and corporate social responsibility, but who don't know where to begin. These people, these companies, they want to do good. They want to decarbonize, but they need to have intermittent targets with incremental access points. They need accountability partners. They need people who will settle for nothing less than reaching zero. And they need help in doing all of these things. Let's first look for who is already helping us put us on the path to zero. We need to look for who is getting it right around the world, who is on track to getting it right here at home, and what are the most pressing battles we must face in the interim. When I left USGBC and founded the Global Network for Zero, it was because even with all the progress, the finish line, if there is one, at minimum, is carbon neutral. The finish line is net zero and then ultimately a zero emissions world. Unsurprisingly, the place where this new idea, this new collective vision came to fruition was right here in India. I reflected on the fact that 29 of my friends and family died during COVID. And I thought about the quality of life they had, not just in their final days, but leading up to when they were infected. And I thought about how, if COVID had this drastic impact on our lives, then think about what climate change could do to us. And with this second leash of life that we all have, what more can we do? In November 2022, the United Nations announced the presentation of a master plan to accelerate the decarbonization of 5 major sectors: power, road, transport, steel, hydrogen, and agriculture. In it, the plan includes governments from more than half of the global GDP, a 1-year action plan with 25 collaborative actions to be delivered by COP28 to help make clean technologies cheaper and more accessible everywhere. What I found even more promising is the plan's list of priority actions, including agreements to develop common definitions for low emission and net zero emission steel, hydrogen, and sustainable batteries, as well as ramping up clean infrastructure projects. Settling a common target to phase out polluting vehicles and stimulate global demand for green industrial goods. And last year, McKinsey article stated that while it was not easy for the United States to reach net zero emissions by 2050, a pathway exists. McKinsey reports that major changes for that pathway would include a zero emissions power sector by 2035, electric vehicles making up 75% of all new car sales by 2030, an 80% reduction of oil and gas methane by 2030, among other changes. While we know that commitments are easier said than kept, what is promising from the US is the growing leadership from businesses in the transition to net zero. In fact, the Science Based Target Initiative pointed out in April 2022 that 400 large US-based companies have also committed to net zero targets of their own, and many of these are for 2030 or earlier. And in March this year, the European Commission issued its proposal for a Net Zero Industry Act aimed at addressing core drivers of net zero technology manufacturing investments, strengthening the EU's net zero ecosystem, and bolstering its worth even further than the $100 billion valuation reported in 2021. Fascinatingly, the Commission revealed that its incentives are further highlighted by the acceleration of other countries, most notably that the United States Inflation Reduction Act will mobilize over USD $360 billion by 2032, and Japan's greenhouse transformation plans aim to raise up to Japanese yen $20 trillion through green transition bonds. These are huge numbers. The proposal also cites the UK, Canada, and others' landmark investments in net zero technologies, and that is where I want to bring it back to us. Because importantly, in all markets, one common denominator can be found: the need for scaling accelerated decarbonization across sectors. In the European proposal, they pointed to India's production-linked incentive scheme to enhance competitiveness in sectors like solar photovoltaics and batteries as an example of the reach necessary for net zero access and success. So when we talk about today's global state of decarbonization, we now know that the helpers, the examples, the places, the business leaders we can turn to are the ones who understand wholeheartedly the importance of taking climate action and who are implementing solutions. We should look into who is striving for net zero by 2050 and not just 2070. Who is accelerating these existing targets even earlier than they announced? Who understands that the lasting solution will come from public-private partnerships? Who is sharing their knowledge and efforts? And importantly, these are the helpers we need, and they can be found all over the world, and especially here in India. The cross-sector leadership here is what gives me the most hope, because that means we get it. Reliance Industries has set a goal, net zero goal for 2035. UN Secretary General points to Dalmia Cement and Mahindra as beacons for innovation and pleading with the leaders to join them. Phenomenally, Dalmia is ranked number one globally on business readiness for a low carbon economy in the cement sector, and the company already stands out with its commitment to bringing carbon negative by 2040, a full 3 decades before India's commitment. After Blackstone's Nucleus Office Park's LEED Platinum celebration and a reduction of more than 87,000 tons of CO2 emissions from 2021 to 2022, Nucleus Office Parks is now pursuing actions to be net zero by 2023 for one of the portfolio assets and has committed to using carbon emission tracking tools. Indian technology and consulting company Wipro has committed to net zero by 2040 and has a near-term target of a 55% reduction in emissions by 2030 and a target of 100% renewable energy by 2030. In 2015, Cisco's Bangalore campus was using 25% renewable energy, and by 2021, they have already improved it to 66%. So commitment after commitment. To do what? To accelerate to zero. Simple as that. But while India may share the decarbonization goals and practices of our global counterparts, we would be wise to recognize the challenges unique to us. We are the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases on the planet. And in 2022, India missed a target for installing 175 gigawatt in renewable energy. In an effort to cut its emission by 45% from 2005 levels, India now plans to issue tenders for the installation of 250 gigawatts of green energy capacity by March 2028 to get back on track. And an Oxford Economics and SAP study recently pointed out to a trend we need to keep an eye on. While 62% of Indian businesses said it is not difficult to be sustainable and profitable, at the same time, only 17% of them have calculated their total carbon footprint. There is a gap between commitment and action on the ground. My concern is that our current state of decarbonization is good, but not good enough. Decarbonization to zero and making that happen as humanly as possible, that's where business leaders must and can really and truly make a difference. And that's what, thankfully, SRK is stepping up to do. As Dr. Nirav Mandir alluded earlier, our friends at SRK have partnered with us at the Global Network for Zero to demonstrate to India and the world how to set effective decarbonization targets and follow through. As they have made a commitment to achieve net zero at SRK House and SRK Empire and are on track to achieve this by 2024, that is 6 years earlier than the original commitment of 2030, 2 decades earlier 2050, and 4 decades earlier 2070. We need more people and companies, especially ones with the largest supply chains in the highest emitting sectors, to follow SRK's lead and to fundamentally understand and act on the fact that we need to accelerate to zero. If we don't, we won't be able to help change the way our neighbors live, the life of that construction worker, the auto driver, and the vegetable vendor. And I know none of us in this room believe that's an acceptable quality of life for our fellow Indians, in fact, for our fellow humanity. I only need to look at the extraordinary humanitarian work that Sri Govind Kaka has dedicated his life to. His dedication to uplifting people from all walks of life across India to have immense hope for the future. I truly believe everyone here is equipped to change our reality and to finally acknowledge that when it comes to climate change, while there is no level playing field, those of us who have more can and should be doing more to eliminate the disparities. And that means being laser focused on getting to zero. We have the resources, human capital, business sense, and innovation here to do so. And we have the pieces to not just get us to zero, but to realize that what the world could be look like and where we maintain that for good. So let's charge ahead towards an emissions-free world, to create a positive impact on people, planet, and profit. Thank you very much.